All right, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for joining again. We're reacting to another carnivore nonsense video. I don't know if I don't know if this guy's carnivore, but it is having to do with eating animals, so we're reacting to it. This video is called "The Ethics of Eating Meat: A Livestock Farmer's Perspective," which I'm actually glad I'm looking at because I get a lot of comments saying, well, you're not a farmer, you've never been a farmer, you don't know what it's like. So we're going to hear it straight from the farmer's mouth and see if exploiting, breeding, killing, abusing other animals sounds any better from a livestock farmer. So, okay, let's get into it.
Hi, I'm Pete, and welcome to Just a Few Acres Farm. Today we're taking Vinnie the steer to the butcher. Vinnie is 27 months old. Here's a comment that I get quite often, and there are nice and nasty versions of it. The nice version is, I don't know if I could take my animals to the butcher. I would get too attached to them. And the nasty version is, you're a murderer. I don't pay much mind to the murderer comments, but I have thought about the ethics of what I'm doing here, which is raising animals for food. And in the course of our farm, I've killed thousands of animals, and I don't have a guilty conscience about it. And
I don't know, man. Like, number one, the fact that you're making this video, but number two, just that sense, I've killed thousands of animals, and I don't have a guilty conscience over it. I guarantee if we had a conversation, you would either have a logically inconsistent position, or you would feel really guilty. Yeah, there's no way. And the nice and not nice version of those, the fact that you can care for another individual, and even he's not calling them its, he's calling animals them, right? They, them, because they're individuals, right? So the fact that you can care for other individuals and then slaughter them, like, that's premeditated killing. I mean, apart from the legal sense of the term, I would definitely say that is murder. But let's continue.
And I also respect the opinions of vegetarians and vegans, and I really admire them for sticking to their guns about what they believe. So in this video, we're going to load up Vinnie the steer and take him to the butcher, while at the same time, I'm going to talk about the ethics of eating meat. First of all, I want to get this idea of humanely slaughtering animals out of the way. It's an oxymoron. It doesn't make any sense. Slaughtering is a brutal process. You're taking another living thing and you're electrocuting it or cutting its throat or shooting it, and it's dying. There's no...
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. So at least, I mean, I don't know if this makes it better, because he's pretty much admitting that, like, he's being honest, saying, like, look, what we do to these animals is brutal. You're electrocuting them, slitting their throats, bolt gunning them in the head. But this is not something I would be saying, like, so proudly. You know, like, it would almost make more sense for him to just feed into the lie of the humane slaughter. But I'm glad he's not. I mean, he's honest. You heard it straight from the farmer. If you think your animals are being killed humanely, he is telling you directly, it is not humane. It is brutal. They get killed. They get electrocuted. They get slashed in the throat. It is not humane. All right. Wow. It's a breath of fresh air. Let's continue.
No humane way to do that. I could be giving it hugs and kisses while it's being killed. It doesn't make any difference. It's a brutal thing.
They're being
I
killed.
do think that the way our animals get killed is a lot better than the disassembly line giant packing plants. Instead of cramming our chickens into crates and hauling them hundreds of miles under a lot of stress, we butcher here on the farm, and we load the chickens up in the morning, and they're dead within a couple hours, and they never leave the property. And our cattle...
Oh, I see. Okay, so this is just an advertisement to purchase animal products through them. Okay, I see. Well, again, at least he was honest. Let's see what else he says.
Go to a local small slaughterhouse where a lot more care is taken, I think, than those giant plants that you always hear about in the news. And I'll show you how we do it with Vinnie. Instead of loading him into a giant tractor trailer and hauling them to the holding yard of some giant packing plant, Hillary and I walk out into the pasture to find Vinnie. Bringing them in is a pretty calm process. We open the gate to the winter pasture behind the barn and call the cows in. When he comes through the gate, we shut it behind him. Now we have to work them into the barn, and if we get too excited...
Look at how sweet these animals are. Like, you even named him. Vinnie. You named him. Vinnie. Vinnie the cow. Vinnie the individual. Vinnie the male. Whatever you want to... Or, I guess... Wait a second. No. Vinnie. But I thought, aren't all meat cows female? Anyway, the point is you name them, right? You name them Vinnie because they're an individual, okay? That's the point. And they trust you, and they get food from you, and as of right now, they are viewing you as their caretaker, their parent, their protector, their something positive, right? At the very least, we can infer that they feel some kind of connection to you that is safe, that has safety involved, right? Because they get their food from you, right? They get their shelter from you. And you're just going to betray that? You're just going to put that aside to kill them and sell them for profit? I don't know how anybody could justify this.
Then he gets too excited, and the job becomes more difficult, so we go about it calmly. We try pushing him in by walking behind him, but he doesn't want to leave the rest of the cattle, and he prefers sampling the pasture to going into the barn.
Yeah.
So we changed tactics, and
It's almost like he's enjoying his life, or they're enjoying their life, and don't want to be shoved in a barn to be killed.
Cattle into the barn, and they calmly walked toward the barn, and Vinnie was the second one in. We closed the gate and sorted out Hux, who had come in before Vinnie. Then we moved Vinnie into a smaller holding pen, which we load from. I rarely have a problem getting cattle to go from a larger pen into a smaller pen, and he walked right in. I think Temple Grandin has noted that in her cattle handling work. In the pen, he gets water and good second cutting hay until we load him into the trailer the next morning. I have a heavy heart while we're doing this. I know this is the last time that he will see the herd that is his family, and it's the last time he'll walk across the pastures that he spent his entire life on since he was born. Here's the core reasoning behind why I have no guilt about raising and killing animals for meat.
Really quick, man, this is just infuriating me. I mean, I'd rather you just be dishonest and delusional and lie. This is just, oh my God. He has a heavy heart. He recognizes that these animals do get separated from their herd, from their families. He's recognizing that it is sad that there is that attachment there. This is so much worse. This is so much worse than people just lying and spreading misinformation about humane slaughter. This is like, if you can watch this and you feel better about where your food comes from, where your dead animal flesh comes from, then you are just as delusional, or you are looking for, I don't know what you're looking for. I don't know. Your values are off. I don't know. This is just insane. All right, why does he not feel guilty? Let's see.
And that is because it's in humans' nature to eat meat. We were built to be omnivores, living off of what we could forage and cultivate in terms of plants, and what we could hunt and grow as far as meat. That's our spot in the food chain. That's where we started out as a race, is occupying that place. I feel no more guilty about killing an animal than a cat or a wolf who kills to eat. And
that's not true. That's not true. And how I know that's not true is because of his comments earlier in the video. He recognizes that it's brutal. He recognizes that it's sad. It's a sad thing, right? Lions, cats, animals in the wild do not recognize that. A, because they probably don't have moral agency, but B, because they are starving. They have no other food source. They have instincts that say kill, eat, whatever their instincts say. This is not the same situation. And I cannot think of a lamer excuse or a lamer reason than it's within human nature. How many awful things are within our nature? Right? Think about how we got here, right? If we go back thousands and thousands and millions and, hundreds of thousands of years ago, right? Before we had laws, right? Do you think that sexual assault was within human nature, right? Humans would sexually assault others naturally in the sense that nobody's like forcing sexual assault, right? It would happen, like one human would just naturally sexually assault another human, right? That's technically natural, right? And in fact, when we say technically natural, what's your definition of natural, right? Disease, bacterial infections are natural, right? Does that mean that everything that's natural is preferable or is moral? Absolutely not, right? Me punching somebody in the face is natural. All of these actions could be considered natural, right? If we're taking the definition of natural to mean things that just happen, like things that happen organically, right? Things that happen without interference, right? All of the disease we have, all of the harmful actions humans do to one another, all of those things are natural. But there comes a time in civilized society where we recognize that just because these actions exist and people commit them doesn't mean that we should allow these actions or make it a societal norm for these actions, to be committed. That is the lamest reason that as to why you don't feel guilty, which you do. Clearly you do. Right? As somebody who is being as honest as he is about it, he definitely feels guilty. He just justifies it because it gives him money. That's all it is. It has nothing to do with nature. It has nothing to do with the fact that you think you're eating this meat as natural as a cat in the wild does. It's because it gives you profit, right? You have made your living off of this. And to turn back on that would mean an entire 180 of your life. And mentally, you just can't handle that. So that's why. That's all this is.
In fact, I feel better about it because I'm taking on that act myself rather than delegating it or proxying it to somebody else to do it so that I can just look the other way and ignore it.
I feel better about killing an individual myself instead of paying a hitman to do it. Great. You've gotten Conscience of the Year award. Good job.
We were not set up to eat vegetables alone. Our digestive system just isn't efficient at it. These guys behind me have a digestive system that is a lot more complicated than ours and designed for making maximum use out of forage, but ours is much simpler. We only have one stomach, and that digestive system tells me this is what we're supposed to eat.
Says based on what? Based on what? Nobody's advocating to eat pasture land grass, right? We're talking about whole grains, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds. All of these things we do great on based on actual peer-reviewed evidence. What are you basing this off of? Oh, is it maybe because you have a business that relies on killing these animals? He doesn't even sound convincing when he's saying these things. At least other carnivore YouTubers, they sound very convincing when they're saying these things. He does it. I could see right through you.
Supposed to eat a varied diet that includes both meat and vegetables. Our teeth tell us that too. I've got molars in the back for grinding up fibrous things like vegetables and sharp teeth in the front for tearing at meat. And my eyes, the very composition of my head. My eyes are oriented in the front. These cattle's eyes are more on the side so that they have more of a view back because they're an animal of prey.
Doesn't matter. So again, what's natural does not always equal moral, right? If somebody's born, right, if a person is born severely mentally handicapped and can't defend themselves, does it mean that they're meant to be preyed upon? Does it mean that they're meant to be taken advantage of? What are we talking about? What are we talking about? Could you imagine using the argument, well, officer, the individual who's severely mentally handicapped, they couldn't defend themselves, so therefore, I felt it was right. It was in my nature to take advantage of them. What? Okay, you've got eyes in the front. Okay, they've got eyes on the side. What does that have to do with their capacity for feeling, their individuality, them wanting to live? Again, it's just more cope. It's just more cope.
And I'm a predator. I have good depth perception. My eyes are in the front of my head and triangulate depth well for hunting game. It's just how we were made. We were made to hunt and eat meat. Every organism from...
Look, just a personal thing, these different camera angles and like, I don't know if he's trying to be personable, but it's really creeping me out. Sorry, that's like I don't know if it's an ad hominem, but just a personal thing here. Just stop with all the camera angles, man. It's really creeping me out.
Plants to herbivores to carnivores to human occupies a certain role in the food chain, and energy density increases as you move up the food chain. So the cattle, which are herbivores, eat a whole lot of forage, a lot of mass of material, but the wolf that might eat them, or us, eats a lot less because it's been concentrated in energy as it moves up the chain. And that's where we're meant to be. We're meant to occupy that spot. Our whole body's set up for it.
Evidence. Please provide evidence. As somebody who's making the claim, please provide evidence.
I grow animals for a purpose. Now, if I can make their life better by taking good care of them while they're here, I feel good about that. But in the end, I'm growing them for food, and I never lose sight of that.
Also, I don't want to backtrack too much, but he does delegate. He said they go to a small factory farm. I'm sorry, a small slaughterhouse, a local slaughterhouse. He's not killing them himself, right? And I don't think he could, even if he wanted to, right? I'm pretty sure he mentioned earlier that they go to a small local slaughterhouse. So he still is delegating it because he knows he feels bad, because he can't do it. Who could do this in their right mind?
I don't enjoy or get my kicks out of killing animals, and I'm not some sadistic guy. When I hunt, I don't hunt for trophy or sport.
Oh, he hunts
too,
okay.
I hunt for food, and that's what I bring home. We grow these animals to provide good food to people, and killing them is part of that process.
Animals do not have to be food, right? It is not we either eat animals as food or we don't have food. They don't have to be food, right? We know this. I am a great example, vegan 7 years. There's plenty of other vegans, if we're talking anecdotal examples. But from the peer-reviewed science, a higher consumption of whole plant foods is beneficial and leads to great health outcomes. And if you're saying that A, it doesn't, or B, actually plants are harmful, show me some research. So show me some peer-reviewed science.
But there is one big question to eating meat, and I think it's a valid one, and that is, yes, eating meat is in our nature, but are we at the point where we should be moving past that nature? After all, we're free-thinking humans, and we have the ability to overcome what our programming tells us in terms of where we fit into the food chain. And
oh my God, he just addressed... So, okay, again, he is kind of being fair, even though he's clearly, like, lost in his... I think he is... He has committed to a life of profit based on raising and killing these animals. So, of course, he's going to find any reason or any kind of reasoning to avoid changing his whole life. Like, his livelihood is dependent on this. But he is addressing the very issue that I had with his previous argument. So, yeah, great. Let's see what he says. Is he going to agree that, okay, as free thinkers, as a society that's ever progressing, we should change what the actions we commit despite our nature, or is he going to come up with some other cope? Okay? Let's play a game. Which one do you think, A or B?
And it's a good thing that we can rise above our nature, because living on a farm, I see how savage the natural order can be. I see dominant pigs pick on pigs lower in the pecking order by chewing on their tails, their ears, or even their legs. I see the original version of the pecking order with our chickens, where chickens will enforce the pecking order by pecking each other bloody. I've seen them cannibalize each other. Nature can be very cruel when it comes to establishing social dominance, and I even see it in people, in terms of our kids going to elementary and middle schools, and our own memories of going to school. Kids can be really cruel to each other, and before they learn to move beyond their basic
and all of that
nature,
is natural.
The idea of cliques and pecking orders in school and the cruelty that kids endure from other kids is something all of us have memories of. But it seems like society's moving beyond that now. Our society becomes more civil as time goes on. I'm a fan of John Muir, a famous nature writer and naturalist, and he has an autobiography of growing up in the 1800s in Scotland before he moved to America. And the autobiography is filled with how brutal society was back then. He goes to school and he gets beat on by the other kids. He even gets beat on by the teacher. Then he comes home and he gets beat on by the neighborhood kids, his own siblings, and his father. It's just,
and all of that is
he
natural.
presents that as something that was just ordinary back then. And I couldn't imagine it happening now. So the theme is that we are able to, as time goes on, become more and more civil, and that's an underpinning of having a successful society. And it makes me wonder if the brutality of slaughter and eating meat is something that maybe we will eventually move away from, because so many people now have divorced themselves so much from the killing of animals, different from the old days when a lot more people were killing for their own meat. They don't even want to look at it now, and the next step is stopping eating meat. And I don't know what the answer is, but that seems like a very valid point to me.
Okay, so he goes through the whole thing, literally debunks his previous, well, nature is moral argument perfectly. He even points to real-life examples of how things happened naturally back then, the brutality of nature and just like acting off of instinct or acting off of just, feelings, whatever the examples he used. And how, as we get more civil, we move away from those actions, right? We choose less harmful actions, right? We choose more peaceful things, right? Or at least that should be the goal. And then at the end of it, he says, well, I don't know what the answer is. Or no, he goes, I think that it would make sense that we eventually get away from eating meat. Why are you not part of that, right? Why would you not be the change that you can logically conclude should be the change, right? He debunked himself and said, well, I don't know what the answer is, but I could see that as a viable option. You just gave we're giving you the answer. Veganism is the answer. There's no other answer. That's the answer to this issue. And by you, again, just your livelihood is preventing you from putting the two together and actually being part of the change that you have logically concluded to. I don't understand. Oh my, this is he's very honest, right? He's honest, and he's making a great case for veganism in a way, but it's infuriating that he's just going to go on continuing to kill these animals even after this.
Living on a farm gives me a lot of time for reflection about things like this, and it always comes to a head around the time that we have to load large animals like pigs and cattle. I always load cattle by myself, and it's not that I don't want Hillary around, it's just I'm the one that they see most often, and I think that they're less likely to be nervous if it's just me with them in there.
Yeah, because they trust you.
Let Vinnie take his time getting comfortable with climbing in the trailer. And if a cow is reluctant, I'll put my hand on its hip to give it a little urgency. But that's it. There's no yelling or pushing. Now, Vinnie was a little bit harder than most steers are. He decided to take a left at the entrance to the trailer, and luckily the pen was enclosed beyond the trailer. So I had to work him back around and put him in the trailer. It wasn't a big deal in the end. It was just a little different than cattle normally load. So after Vinnie was in the trailer, I hooked the truck up to the trailer and pulled it out, and Hillary climbed in the truck with me, and we headed off to the butcher. At the butcher, Hillary helped.
The worst part is like when I talk to non-vegans or like carnivores, or when you see carnivores, this is like the ideal farm. This isn't even factory farming. This is an animal slipping over each other's feces and, you know, getting infections because of the crowded spaces. This is like as ideal as it gets to a farm. And it's still, based on the own farmer's logic, unjustifiable and just insane and still like really sad. This is like really sad. It's like infuriating me.
Me unload Vinnie, and we walk him into his pen. There's this loud blower at the butcher that always makes the cattle nervous. It's a really loud exhaust fan they have, and so eventually we work Vinnie through all the
Look at
various
that. That's
pens,
terrifying.
and we get him into.
It's like putting him through a haunted house. Look at it. It's terrifying. I get scared in haunted houses, and I know it's fake. I know haunted houses are fake, and I get scared. Could you imagine?
The one that he's going to spend the night in, and he'll wait there until the next morning when he'll be slaughtered first thing, early. It's a sad farewell.
I bet you that they're not going to show the footage. I guarantee you they're not going to show the footage. This is bad enough for me as someone who's already vegan, but if you're not vegan and you're watching this, you're like, oh, okay, everything seems kind of peaceful. I bet you they're not going to show the footage. And if they do, I mean, hands off to this guy for complete transparency. But I can almost guarantee you they're not going to show it.
Another reason to move beyond eating meat, maybe it's environmental impact, and the press loves to harp on this. It's like the popular topic that eating beef is bad for the planet. Well, I'm here to say that eating beef is not bad for the planet if it's pastured properly. It's actually good for the planet, and I have a whole video on it that I'll put up here.
That's
the things that are worse for the planet than eating beef are actually, in my opinion, eating chicken and pork, because chicken and pork are single-stomached animals, and you have to feed them grain to get them to grow well, and that grain activates a whole fossil fuel-intensive trucking and growing system. So,
hold on.
Beef's where it's at.
Is this guy only a beef farmer? Oh my God, that would be, that's like complete, just a complete ad for his business. If he's only a beef farmer or a cow farmer, that would mean that he's literally being like, oh no, you know what's worse for the environment than cows? Chicken and pork. Don't eat any of that. Just eat my wonderful, non-humane, based on my own words, non-humane beef.
And pasturing ruminants like cows can be such a wonderful self-contained system that builds good soil every year, contrary to growing vegetables, where most of the time tillage is required and a lot of fossil fuel intensive activities to keep that soil as a proper medium for growing plants. And fertilizer has to be added, usually because what you're eating in vegetables is being removed from the soil. With beef, it's different. You can create a self-contained grazing system that builds good soil and only requires the manure from the cows, sunlight, water, and CO2 to thrive. So should we...
First of all, those are individuals, right? So even if that's true, let's say that having cows graze on pasture is going to restore all the soil and would allow us to grow more things or benefit, whatever, right? We can do that without exploiting them and killing them, right? If we literally just allowed cows to live on pasture, why there would be no rights violations, right? We don't have to violate their rights. I can definitely see some kind of future where there's like sanctuaries on very wide, large pasture fields that allow cows to roam freely, which then in turn benefits the soil and the land. And then we could grow food on that, or we could do whatever we got to do, right? So it's not like okay, this is great for the planet, and then we have to exploit and kill these animals for their flesh. It doesn't. I don't see that it has to be that way. But also research, any evidence showing that this kind of ideal mom and pop farm is sustainable for the demand we have of animal products, or B, that it's better for the environment than crop agriculture, right? I would need to see some research.
We stopped growing meat because of its environmental impact. Well, I don't think so. No, but wait a second. Couldn't we avoid this whole discussion and remove killing it from the process entirely by eating lab-grown meat? It's the next big thing, you know. It absolutely disgusts me, lab-grown meat. How could we think that that is the future? I am saying we need to move back toward nature in the way that we eat.
Okay, so lab-grown meat, something that's grown in a sterile environment that is engineered to be the exact replica of animal flesh, but in a sterile, clean environment where we can actually control for a lot of, where we can control for different factors. That is disgusting to you, but killing and eating the flesh of a cow who would shit and who pees and who, when they're killed, has to have the blood drained out of them, when there can be pathogens, foodborne pathogens on their flesh, when their flesh can rot, that's not gross to you. That's totally fine. But lab-grown meat, oh yeah, that's disgusting. Okay, yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Either vegetarian or meat eater, coming closer to the source is always better. Eating less refined foods, I know, is a better way to go. Now we're saying we're going to eat more refined foods, foods that are so removed from nature that they don't even occur in nature. We're growing them in the lab and feeding them who knows what chemicals. That is so goofy.
Wait, growing them in the lab and feeding them who knows what chemicals? What does that even mean? There's no way. They're not growing animals in the lab. They're growing the flesh in the lab. I don't think they're feeding them or whatever, however they're doing it. The point is, it can't be any less gross than killing an actual animal.
That is not even an option on the table for me. Well, nothing gets me going more than lab-grown meat, and I hate to see the investors, all the billionaires that are investing in it, that are...
Yeah, he's just trying to deter people from actually going towards a future that involves less suffering, a more vegan future, and just so they buy the meat from his farm. That's all. This is just an advertisement.
Saying it's the future.
A very bad advertisement because he debunked himself.
I don't have a clear answer for you at the end of this video, and I think that is perfectly fine. There are so many people in the world today that are saying it has to be this or this, black or white, vegan or carnivore. I don't think that's the way at all. Our world is a wonderful mix of grays. You don't have to be this or that because there's so much in between that makes life so rich. So yes, I eat the meat that we grow and that I kill, but...
It's a wonderful mix of grays for you, right? Not for the animals. If you're any other animal besides human on this planet, it is a horrible, horrible place. Especially livestock animals. It is a horrific, horrific place for you. It is not a wonderful mix of grays.
I also eat a lot of vegetables, and variety is where it's at. I think that the challenge is for everyone to look at the sources of the food that they eat and make sure...
You mean the non-humane sources that you admitted? You admitted that this whole process is brutal, non-humane, it saddens your heart, right? If this farm is the best farm that can exist, and even you're admitting, the owner of this farm is admitting that, what other source can I got it. I should just be vegan. Yeah, thank you. You led me to veganism with this advertisement.
Or that they are comfortable with the way that their food is being grown. You can't turn your eyes from the fact that your diet includes the killing of animals, and you have to be okay with that yourself in order to continue that. Turning the other way isn't an option in my book. I'm just a farmer, but living in that world of grays is a lot more colorful to me than either being black or white. I would love it if you told me what you think about all this via your comments down below, and put some thought into it. I'd love to see some thoughtful comments and responses and no name calling. I hope this video was informative. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, no name calling necessary. I mean, I'm not going to call this guy a murderer. or an animal abuser or anything. I'm just going to go off of what he said, right? Again, I think to sum it up, he has a farm where he profits off of the killing of animals that he raises. There is no such thing as humane slaughter. Based on his own words, it is brutal. They are electrocuted. They have their throats slit. He does pass it on to a local slaughterhouse. He doesn't kill the animals himself because he is saddened and I don't think he could stomach actually doing it himself. And he has provided no evidence for a single claim that he has made. And his only justification for why this is fine, why he feels no guilt, is it's natural. It's within a human nature. And then he goes on to debunk that, like eloquently debunks his own justification. He says, because it's nature, and then he says, well, come to think of it, a lot of things are in our nature, and we choose to get away from those actions. And I think that may happen with eating meat. I don't have an answer for you, but that seems pretty viable. And then just continues to kill all these animals who trust him, who are enjoying their life on the pasture. Out of all the carnivore ones, the other videos I've done, it's more outlandish. It's more like, oh, these guys are clearly delusional or whatever. This one infuriates me. Because this is clearly somebody who is level-headed in the sense that he doesn't think plants are trying to kill you. He doesn't try and lie about how humane slaughter is. So he's got some kind of head on his shoulders. But at the end of the day, I guess he just doesn't care enough to change his life, right? He's got a system. He's got a life committed to profiting off of the exploitation and killing of animals. And he's not going to stop doing that, even if his own logic tells him he should. So that's it, guys. Thank you very much for joining, for tuning in. I appreciate it. I have a new update. If you made it this far, you can now be a member. You could join as a member on the channel. So any help and support for my work is greatly appreciated. I want to keep doing this. I want to keep doing more vegan content, spreading the vegan message more and more. I've got a lot of ideas, so any support you can give, comment, subscribe, like, join as a member, all of that. I really appreciate it, and I hope you'll join me on the next one.